advance my slides, and I've shared my screen. Okay. Jane West and Marguerite Izzo are going to do a lot of the presenting of the content. I'm going to do a little bit of the review, and Brett Bigham, who's going to get on a little late because he's from Oregon, but he's been the head of the subcommittee for Day of the Hill, is going to be helping us with the questioning.
He just called, Laurie. I think he's going to be with us in a minute.
Oh, great. Thank you. And we will be doing a lot in the chat room, in the chat group. So if you haven't found your chat box yet, it's in your toolbar, either on the top or the bottom, and click on that, because there will be opportunities to answer questions in the chat. And also there will be opportunities to just answer them orally through your microphone. Welcome. And we are going to start off with Miss Jane. And Jane, I've got the controls here, so you may have to nudge me. But Jane is going to start us off with the beginning, which is, what is the purpose of the Day on the Hill? I'm trying to advance it, and sorry. Okay, now I figured it out.
Yay, okay. Thanks, Laurie. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are really excited about this event, NNSTOY's first Day on the Hill. Our registration is almost at capacity of our room, which is about 80. So we are really thrilled. We had to estimate how many people we thought we might have, and our estimate was 50, so we're already beyond that. So this is really terrific. So what are the goals of this experience? Number one is for our organization to speak with one national voice. We know that you all are very active in your state. You're very active on your own and in collaboration with some others. But the purpose here is for us to have one voice that we chime in together. We will have opportunities to give personal examples of our key talking points and that sort of thing. But remember that you're here on behalf of NNSTOY, and your voice is part of the NNSTOY voice. The second is to build your policy and advocacy skills. Some of you may never have done these congressional visits before, so there'll be a new experience for you. They're a lot of fun. I've been working with educators to do this sort of thing for 30 years, and everyone leaves feeling very empowered and feeling like that they're at the beginning, or they're at least moving along on a new part of their professional life. So I think you're really gonna enjoy it. Despite what you hear about what's going on in Washington, members know that they work because you vote them in. So I always say, you hire them and you fire them. And they know that constituents are where their bread is buttered, no matter what their particular political views. So meeting with constituents is a very important part of being a public official. The other thing is, we want this experience in Washington.
Charlie, come here for a minute.
To somebody maybe needs to mute their.
Somebody who just called somebody to the phone, or come here a minute. If you'll please mute that would be wonderful.
So the other purpose is that we want this to serve as a model for states. For those of you who have state chapters, for those of you who are building state chapters, and we hope that's everyone, this is the sort of thing you can also do at your state capital. So that's part of our thinking in putting this forward. One reason we have the state leads, we want to build capacity back home. I'm going to the next one. So what's going to happen? This is July 19th. This is after the rest of the conference is over. We will, in the morning, we can get into the room at 8. So we will get there as soon as we can. You'll be traveling on your own from the hotel, by car, by taxi, by Uber, by Metro. For those of you who like to walk a few miles, you can do that too. We will have breakfast available when you get there, and we'll begin by just sort of setting the stage. Brett and Catherine and a couple of other NNSTOY leaders will just kind of make some orienting remarks. Then we have invited 4 members of Congress to come and give some sort of opening remarks that will be relevant to teachers and to what's on the table for education policy in the Congress. The folks we've invited are Senator Durbin from Illinois, who was kind enough to sponsor the room for us and secure the room for us. Senator Blunt from Missouri, who is critical to education funding. He chairs the Labor HHS Education Appropriations Subcommittee that makes the funding decisions in the Senate. Representative Rice from New York, who is Marguerite's representative, who has introduced Teachers at the Table, and hopefully that will be reintroduced, and she'll be talking about that. And Senator Collins from Maine also, who serves on the committee in the Senate that authorizes education legislation, and a real outspoken advocate for education. Then we'll have a Hill panel. We're going to have 2 former Hill staff and 2 current Hill staff talking about what it means to be an effective advocate, what works, what doesn't work, giving us really some tips and, you know, reflecting on their experience as far as being on the receiving end of many, many, many advocacy visits. So that should be really interesting. Then we will go over all the materials. We will have many materials for you. We will have talking points for you. We will have maps for you. We will review all of our materials and make sure you're comfortable with what we have. And then you'll split into groups by your state. For those of you who are there on your own, you will be in groups too, so that you can practice your meeting and what your key points are and run through that. The goal is for you to be really comfortable when you walk into that meeting. Lunch will be on your own. There's a cafeteria right downstairs, got everything you could ever want. And then the appointments, we are asking that you schedule them between 1 and 5 in the afternoon. And then my favorite part, we have happy hour debrief. Not quite sure where we're doing that yet, but we will find a place.
Great. Okay, oops, sorry, I went one too far. All right, so I would like to just really quickly review some of the materials that we had on the site for you. And I want to just, I'm going to try this. I've never tried to link straight from here while I'm trying to share my screen, but here we go. I'm going to try to share with you how to find the stuff you need on the site. So, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's see. Okay. All right, so this is what the website for the conference looks like if you haven't already gone to it. If you are trying to find it, it's very easy. It's nstoy.org/NC or National Conference 2017. But the way I always go to it is I just go to www.nstoy.org, and then it's one of the tabs on the top. And I just click on the tab, and I still do that. I want to just make you aware of a couple of things. So first of all, when you scroll down, there is a particular tab just for Day on the Hill. And it's got a lot of stuff that you could use. So for instance, you can sign up to be on the waiting list. I'll talk about that in a minute. This is that one-pager handout on the role of state leads. This is a video about the role of state leads. And then in terms of making an appointment with a member of Congress, we're going to want one person from your team, usually the lead, but it could be somebody else if they volunteer, to definitely make the appointments for your senators. And to then each person should call their local congressperson to make their appointments if they can. But what I wanted to point out to here is here's the video on how to make an appointment. And if you haven't already looked at it, it shows like where to go, how to find out who your senators are if you don't know. There is a document on how to schedule an appointment. It has links in it. And then this tab here is a letter template. So you can click on that and actually get a letter that you just fill in your representative's name and your name and that kind of thing, and you can just email that to them, and it's on NNSTOY letterhead. Other thing I wanted to show you on this web page here is that there is a sign up for events, and if you go to that, there's all these buttons of things to sign up for, including Day on the Hill stuff. This is going to say waitlist for Day on the Hill. I just pinged them about that, but there's other things to sign up for if you want to go to the Night at the Museum social outing. We've got the service day options and so forth. So just wanted to let you know that that is there. Now, I don't know. Oh, yay, it worked. I wasn't sure. This is what I was not sure about. Okay, so that's the first thing. I would like to talk for a minute about the role of state leads. And since I'm assuming you looked at the materials, or you will, not going to belabor it, but the first thing you really want to try to do is figure out who's coming to the conference from your state and who should be coming to Day on the Hill. Maybe there's somebody who you really think from your state should go, but they haven't signed up for the conference yet. You know, you could do a little bit of urging them to sign up and come, particularly if you think you really need them. Now, what about the fact that we're about at capacity? Well, a couple of things with that. One is that anybody can come to the afternoon of the agenda. So if, you know, worst case scenario, if you couldn't get into the morning because the wait list was full and everybody showed up, which by the way, almost never happens. You know, you'll have people who signed up to come who get tired and are going to go back or don't want to do it. And so they're going to wait it out. And so that would mean we would have more room for people who signed up on the waiting list. But let's say that doesn't happen. There aren't enough people coming off to fill in the slots on the waiting list. Well, what you could do is you could plan to do a couple of things. One is they could meet you in the congressional cafeteria or one of the cafeterias at lunchtime, and they could still go on the visits with you, particularly if you as the state lead are pretty up on what you're supposed to be doing and saying. One of the participants said, can my husband come? This would be a perfect way. Your husband's probably not already signed up for Day on the Hill. This would be a perfect time for the husband to come meet you. The other thing is that there will be a couple of times during the conference. One is during a networking break, and one is during the unconference, when if you don't want to network or you really need information about the state lead, that you can meet with us and we can give you materials and go over it. So let's say you aren't going to be able to go to the morning, which we're sorry, but we just ran out of room, but you still could participate in the afternoon and support your team. What you want to be sure that you do is you want to be sure that you get your team to register for Day on the Hill. And they should sign up. They should be on the waiting list. If you're a state lead and you haven't signed up for Day on the Hill, go ahead and sign up, even though it'll put you on the waiting list. You're not on the waiting list. We've already counted you in who's going to be in the room. But sign up so that we've got all your data, because there's a place for you to put in like your cell phone number and that kind of thing so that other people on your team will have that information. So please go ahead and do that. I also wanted to let you know that in your materials, we gave you some information. For instance, we uploaded who's coming by state, and this is just the first page of it. Now, the way it uploaded, it's really, really tiny when you download it, when you click on the link. So you have to, click to get it big enough where you can actually read it. But I wanted to share with you. So for instance, you can see that Justin Minkle right here is a state lead. He's in bold with an asterisk, and that's what that means. The fact that we don't have his email address or his phone number means he hasn't registered yet. So you feel free to zing him for that. But meanwhile, sweet Beth Maloney, who's on the call and is a state lead, has in fact registered, and there is one other person from her state who has registered. So that's how you can kind of tell that. So we took out their other personal information, but we left in the state, the email, and the phone number so that you could work that out. One reason you want to get a sense of how many people are on your team is that you are going to have to organize in terms of who's going to say what and so forth. And so it would be nice to know, if you're going to have 8 or if you're going to have 1 or 2. So then the next thing I just wanted to do is in your chat box, I wanted to see if you, if there was anything else that you thought in the materials on the state leads that seemed really important, or if you had any questions. And so this would be a way to review for somebody who hasn't reviewed the materials yet, or you might have had a question from it. So I just want to, in the chat box right now, if everybody will just let us know if you've got any questions or topics. And I am trying to find my chat box. I think I swiped it off the page somewhere. Yeah, I'm having trouble finding my chat box. I think I'm
in here, Lori. I don't,
you don't see anybody yet?
Doesn't look like anybody has any burning questions. Here is one from Ann Neary. I'm wondering if my state lead will contact me soon.
So one thing you could do is contact your state lead, right? You could say, I realize, we're in the group together. Oh, and I found my box.
Okay, good.
So you could contact your state lead yourself. You could also volunteer to do some of the help. I mean, the problem is that some people are like taking a week off right after school's over and they might regroup later, but you could also divide and conquer on the work. I know you're the state lead, would you like me to? And you could volunteer to do something, and we'll tell you a few of those things that you could volunteer to do. One is some of the research, for example. Good question. What are the realistic expectations if you're going alone? Jane, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. You are going to be fine if you're going alone. We will have materials for you. You will be able to practice. For those of you who are going alone, and after all of our practicing and preparing, you still would like somebody to come, I will make myself available. I imagine Lori will be available. Yeah. Perhaps if your meetings are at different times from other people's, you saw Connecticut has 5 or 6 people, or, we will make sure you're comfortable. But I can promise you, we are going to have so many materials for you that I think you will be. Also, I'll be available during the conference before we get here. Brett will be available, Lori, Marguerite. We can have plenty of opportunity to interact, as well as on email in advance if you have questions.
I wanted to answer Katie Westby's question. She says, where is a link to the list of people registered by state? So I sent it to you in the confirmation email. And as long as you have registered for the webinar, you'll get that all again tomorrow, or as soon as I get the link to the video, and I can send that as well. If you didn't get it and you want to send me an email, laurie@nnstoy.org, I can be sure that you get it. But this is the thing about the list. It's static. So in other words, it doesn't populate every time somebody new registers. So what do? And also there's a list, another list that I linked to was a list of everybody who's registered for the conference. And you can scroll over and scroll down to the state. And so you can see, oh, there is somebody from my state, but they haven't registered for Hill Day. Maybe you want to just connect with them and find out if they're going. The way you can find out from now on is just to check the NNSTOY closed Facebook group. And if you're not a member of the NNSTOY closed Facebook group, you should become a member. And if you need help with that, email me and I'll help you. But every time an NNSTOY registers, I put it on the group, like somebody new has registered, yay. And that's how Michael Dunley figured out some folks. He's been trying to help us find state leads. And so that's how he's been able to figure out, oh, we don't have a state lead for X state. At least I now know 2 people from that state who've registered, and I'll reach out. So that's an excellent way to just keep up. And when I post them on the Facebook page, I always tell the state and year of recognition. So that would be another way to do that. It's in the email, Katie, in the there's a list of stuff to look at before the webinar, and there's a list of stuff for after, and it's in that list. It's a link. And I can send it again. Okay, let's just keep going, and there will be more time for questions at the end. I've already showed you what the page looks like, so I'm not gonna go back and do that again and belabor it. But I did want to also see if there were any questions about making an appointment. So there was another set of materials. I think they're fairly helpful, but you can let us know if they are or not. But what do you need to know about how to make an appointment? I showed you where the letter is on the website, but does anybody have a question about that or a comment about something that they thought was really particularly important?
I'm curious too, how many of you have made appointments and what was that experience like? Or were you sort of waiting for the webinar? I see one question there. It's not too late. Oh no, it's not too late at all. In fact, you know, I mean, it's certainly not too early, but you've got plenty of time to make an appointment. So definitely, you know, get started, send the email. Typically, every member of Congress has a website. So that's a great place to go to get a sense of what the member's all about. And almost all of them have a way to contact the office. They'll ask you to put in your zip code because they only want to hear from their constituents. And often you can request an appointment through there, or the sheet that Lori was talking about has all kinds of information about how to call. There's a sample letter there that you can email, etc.
Hey, Jane.
Yeah.
This is Karen Vogelsang in Tennessee. I apologize,
Hi, Karen.
I'm not on my computer. Hey, twice in one day. How lucky am I? I have contacted Senator Alexander's office a couple of weeks ago. I went to his website. I used the letter from the NNSTOY page, and I faxed that per the instructions on his website for setting up an appointment. That's been almost ago. So I wanted to get some information from you in terms of next steps, since I haven't heard anything back yet.
I would recommend calling the office.
Okay.
There is a generic phone number, 202-224-3121. It's on that sheet of paper. It's the Capitol switchboard, and they will connect you. Ask for Senator Alexander's office. Whoever answers the phone, you can say, I sent a request in to set up a meeting as directed by the website 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard back. Could you help me? And you might want to mention that, you know, you'll be in town July 19th, and you very, very well may be steered to a staff member, which is fine. But sort of tell them what your topic is, and that you are a Teacher of the Year or a finalist, and your organization's coming to town, and you're very eager to have a conversation with him or with the appropriate person in the office.
And we really want you to talk to Alexander. He's got a lot of power right now. So I'm glad you're asking that question. Okay.
Before I went to Corker.
Yeah, no, you should do both.
Yes.
You should be making appointments for both of your senators and your representatives.
Right.
Okay. Well, I was shooting for Alexander first, and then I was going to, you know, go to Plan B and Plan C in terms of the time. So
I would ask for all three. You know, the thing is too, when you make your appointments, make your Senate appointments next to each other in terms of, you know, 2 o'clock and 2:45 or something. And then if you're going to more than one House appointment, if you're with a group, cluster those together too. It'll keep you from having to walk back and forth across the Capitol.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep going because we're at 8:25 and we still have some other content to get to. Let me see if I can figure out how to advance here. Okay. I think you're up, Marguerite.
Hi, everybody. So my slide says, have a good first date. Well, really want to have that second date, don't you? So I'm just going to speak from my experience, which has always been very, very positive. If I have to wait a little bit in an office, I'm cool with that. And I make it a point, that's the way I was raised, to treat the 22-year-old behind the desk as if he were the representative or she were the representative herself. Those people are the gatekeepers, and they're really, really, really important. I get to know their names, and I get to know where they went to high school and where they went to college, and I'm interested in them. I think it's fascinating. And then I remember that stuff when I have to call back. So that's part of this relationship building, not just with the representative. As Jeannie and I were talking in the chat box, the representative wants the photo op with you. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's when the staffer opens up the notebook and starts writing down things that you say that you think, well, okay, now I'm on a roll. I'm going to stick with this. And I always like to tell a story because people remember stories, and because it makes me feel much more connected to the people I'm supposed to be representing, my students and my parents and my colleagues. So very briefly, my story about a child who complained about the nonstop testing led to a phone call the next day from my representative saying 10 years ago, I'd like to introduce the Teachers at the Table Act. And after I almost swallowed my tongue, I almost died. I realized the power of stories. She remembered that kid's name. She remembered details about that story. And she was a tremendous asset all these years in building NNSTOY into the organization it is, because I think all of us founding members recognized how important our responsibility is to tell our stories, to tell our students' stories and our parents' stories and our colleagues' stories. So they love that too. It makes them feel closer to their constituents. When I met her successor this summer, her opening, she's so funny, Kathleen Rice. Her opening line was, so what about this Common Core? Okay. What about this Common Core? What would you like me to say to you about this Common Core? I'm not going to jump off a bridge over this stuff. I'm going to give a nuanced and honest appraisal of it. And when you're honest, people really respond to that. They really do. So I've had meetings that are very short, and I don't take it personally. I've had meetings that have gone on and on and on, and had follow-up phone calls, and that's a great thing. I also offer them the opportunity to come to my school, to come to my classroom, to come and have their picture taken with their constituents, and they absolutely love that. And then, there's this terrific resource that NNSTOY can be for these people. If they want to get information about rural education, we can poll our members real fast and get them what they need. If they want to know about any subject area, about any issue in education, and want to know what award-winning teachers think about it, we can provide that information very quickly. Plus, we have this treasure trove of reports and publications that later on people will talk about, what to leave in the office. So I think I covered.
That's great.
First date. There'll be
Yeah. And so the whole idea there is you want a second date, right? Yeah. You're not there to, it's just like on the first date, you wouldn't say, will you marry me? You're not trying to close the deal on the first date. If you are, shame on you. So exactly. It's just a matter of building a relationship and offering yourself as a resource as a solution to problems that they may have, understanding education and providing good education. Okay, Marguerite, next for you was the elements of the good meeting, and you've talked about some of them, but any more that you want to speak about?
Can I throw in something real fast?
Sure.
I've been muted this whole time and didn't realize it. No one was answering me. I think what Marguerite said about the gatekeepers is really important. I know that when I do my thank yous after a meeting with my congressman or the senator, I always send a thank you to the person who set up the meeting. And that is why they call me now. Because the person who sets up the meetings is often the person who makes the decision of who they're going to call for a later meeting. So a thank you to them, I think, is important. And they do a lot of work and don't get thanked. So that carries a lot of weight. So Marguerite, I think that's really important. And that's not just for this meeting. I think that's for any meeting that TOY goes to. That secretary deserves a little thank you sometimes. So very good.
No, you know what, Brett? It kind of reminds you of the person who serves you in a restaurant. Like, why wouldn't you treat this person? Well, anyway, so you do that. When we talk about rehearsing a little bit, so I was lucky enough to do this work originally with people like Maddie Fennell and Terry Caldestall, people who understood media really, really well. And I kept my mouth shut and I watched and I listened. And that was sort of one of the things that they taught me to do in these meetings too, is listen very carefully. What is it that this person needs from you? Now you have to find that that common ground, and you can find common ground with anyone when it comes to students. You find that common ground, and that's where you build. You know, you offer yourself as a resource, and they're so tired of hearing people complain. You know, you're just like a breath of sunshine when you come in with something that's positive or solution oriented. So when she asked me about Common Core, I wasn't going to scream and yell about some of the problems that I found with its implementation in my state. I found something positive to say. We had a longer conversation much later. So I've talked about being flexible. Don't take it personally if it's a short meeting or if they're running late or if you don't get to see the representative, his or herself. Your tight, clear messaging is probably going to be much more clear when you go through the resources that Lori and Jane have done an outstanding job of in providing for us. No, stay on the script. This isn't about Marguerite Izzo talking about what's important to her. This is about what is important to NNSTOY, the organization. We polled our members. We know what our members think. And in this meeting, if you're going as a representative of NNSTOY, we have to be very clear about sticking to that script.
I didn't mean to advance that next slide.
That's fine, but there we are.
So I wasn't trying to move you on though.
Moving right along.
Also Marguerite, talking a little bit about preparing for the meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. What am I saying? There, you've got it. I'm not going to read a slide to somebody, right? Doesn't that sound crazy, folks?
Well, why don't we give everybody a minute to just kind of look at it and see if anybody has any questions or comments. By the way, there's a handout that has all of this on it, so you don't have to try to write it all down, and also you'll have the PowerPoint. Jane, is there anything on there you want to comment on?
No, just if anybody has any questions, happy to respond.
I think the one point about doing your homework, the homework is a couple of different things. One is you should kind of know where your representative or senator is on education in general before you go in, because you have to know if they're going to be resistant to an idea, which doesn't mean you don't push back, but you'd say it differently than somebody who is like already in the choir, right? So it's a good idea to do some research once you've got an appointment and find out what you can about that member of Congress. Also, if there's so many people to see, because you're going to see all the people on your team, you know, if you've got a big team and you're going to see a lot of people, then you can be strategic about who to see. The other thing that you want to do is to do some homework about the issues that we're going to be talking about, and we'll tell you about that in a minute, but how they play out in your state. So for instance, if we're talking about a topic like, well, one of our big topics is educational equity. So you can talk about what that means in your district or in your state. And if you have facts or a story that can really help the senator or congressperson to get their head around it, as Marguerite mentioned earlier, that's really, really helpful. Just make sure the story doesn't take 30 minutes. Are there any other questions about the items up there?
We're not kidding about the comfortable shoes, folks. I lost a heel on one of these trips and it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. It's also, it could be cold in the building, but it's going to be hot dang hot outside. There are, if you're on the House side, you can go from building to building underground, but it's not very easy. But you can't get from the House to the Senate or the Senate to the House.
All the Senate buildings are connected underground too. You just,
right.
You have to go outside to go from one side to the other.
From one side to the next. Okay, well, let's continue then, if I can advance this. Okay, Jane, that's you.
Okay, these are just the elements of a meeting. This is a suggested outline. Obviously, it's not a script. This is just to help you structure your meeting. You want to start out introducing what is NNSTOY. I think, you know, some of the key points that are really appealing to offices is that as a group of expert teachers, you cover the waterfront. You cover the waterfront geographically, you cover the waterfront in terms of grade levels, you cover the waterfront in terms of subject areas. And as a collective body of expertise in teaching, you can offer rural perspectives, urban perspectives, suburban perspectives, you know, math, science, a range of topics. And that NNSTOY, your organization, is available to pull those voices together to provide them with information on a specific area or issue that they're interested in. Laurie, we're moving slides here.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to be. Let me get you back. Okay.
All right, thank you. Good, I haven't memorized this. Then obviously, you want to introduce yourself, whoever's there. You know, I'm Joe Smith. I'm the 2014 Teacher of the Year from Arizona, etc. And then our national policy priorities. These are our talking points. These, we are in the process of pulling them from the Federal Policy Survey that all of you all, I'm sure, filled out. And that really is the way we determine the perspective of our collective membership. And the four key areas we're going to be looking at are equity, teacher leadership, vouchers and school choice, and social emotional learning. And we will have each of these areas fleshed out. For example, in the area of equity, we're going to be talking about the importance of Title II funding. As you all know, I'm sure the president's budget has recommended eliminating that program, that $2.3 billion professional development program. Not a good idea if you're a state looking to implement ESSA and looking to use some of those funds to address the inequitable distribution of experienced and successful teachers, or if you're looking to build your teacher leadership capacity. So we're going to be linking directly to what's happening in the budget. There are a few bills that we'll be talking about, like Teachers at the Table. That is just a critical bill for us in terms of teacher leadership, and we'll be asking for members to co-sponsor that. So those are the key areas. They'll be fleshed out further for you. And we will also have, we're in the process now of writing up the results of our survey, and you'll be able to leave those behind so they can see that. Again, what can NNSTOY do for you? We talked about that. And then, as Marguerite said, time to listen. What are your priorities? What is on your radar screen? Where are the areas where we can be a resource to you? And I have never been in a meeting where there wasn't a pretty clear response to that. I've never heard an office say, well, we don't have any. So I think you'll hear, you want to listen for a place you can intersect with them in a positive kind of way. And then as you close, I really encourage you to invite them to come and visit. It's powerful. And they like to do that. They like to come. They like the photo op. They like to be in the classroom. There'll be materials for you to leave behind, and you always want to follow up with a thank you note. As Brett and Marguerite said, that's just so very important. This is all, again, written on a handout in greater detail.
The talking points aren't in a lot of detail right now. It's because we're still putting the National Policy Survey results together, but you will have them in your hand when you come to the conference, and you'll also have the policy survey. So as you can see from Jane going over this, you can see where if you have more than one person, that's kind of nice because you can divide up who's going to say what. One of the things that I think is critical as your communications director is I think everybody should memorize that first bullet. Like, there's a lot of people who don't know what NNSTOY is. I mean, I sent the newsletter to congressional staffers, and somebody wrote back and said, what's an NNSTOY? And so I was like, okay, I need a different logo. I should have put the one on that says, but anyway, this phrase should trip off your tongue. National Network State Teachers of the Year is a nationwide network of teacher leaders who use their teacher leadership to improve practice, policy, and advocacy on behalf of all students. And that should be on everybody's, radar. And then right in, I like what Jane said, and it's on the handout. One of the strengths of our organization is because we are a national network, we touch every state and all the territories, and we touch all the subject areas and all the grade levels. So that's what we're about. And people don't know that, and you need to just be able to say that quickly. All right, let's see, learning the intricacies of, okay. This is in your handouts. This is one of the things that there's a link to it in the materials that I sent to you. This is just the first page of it, but it's everything that Jane and a lot of what Marguerite just went over, but in more detail. So for example, it lists the materials that you'll have to take with you and so forth. So take a look at that. And now I think we are on to questions. Brett, it's your turn.
I'm here. I'm ready. I just need some questions.
Any questions about any aspect of this day on the Hill or being a lead? We're game.
Or any experiences anybody has had in trying to make an appointment or anything like that?
I know that mine went very easily. I have a good relationship with Senator Merkley's office, but I sent out my request to both senators and my congressman on the same day, and I got a response back within 2 days from Merkley's office, and I'm still waiting on the other ones. So,
all about that relationship, isn't it?
Some offices are quicker than others, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same experience when I was there in 2010 as a presidential awardee. I let my congressman know I was coming, and I met with 2 of the representatives and then a staff member. So it was fun. It was easy. They're very open, and they do like to do the photo ops.
They do love their photo ops.
Somebody asked about getting the materials in advance, for example, the talking points. We're going to be doing an email out to everyone who's registered for Day on the Hill before you get here, with things like the talking points and even more materials than what's available online. So you should have plenty of advance time to, look at them on the plane, think about them, etc.
But we are not posting them online, so we don't want the whole world to have them. We're not secretive about it, but that's why we're sending in an email. And that's why your email has the handouts of some of the stuff, just because we just don't want to broadcast it to everybody ahead of time.
Anybody who's experienced with Hill meetings want to contribute some recommendations or add to what we've talked about? I know it can be intimidating the first time you do it. So it's always helpful to hear, people's stories and what it was like.
So when I first came to Washington, I got a meeting with Heath Ledger, who was my representative in North Carolina. And he just really wanted to talk about his dyslexic son, and that's okay. It's part of like establishing the relationship, but I still had to kind of let him know who I was and what I was doing there. This was pre-NNSTOY, so that I could continue to follow up with him.
This is Cindy in North Carolina. My story is a little bit relative to that, Lori, in that when I went up my Teacher of the Year, I met with Senator Burr and Senator Hagan from North Carolina. Senator Hagan had just taken office. In fact, she wasn't even in her official. I had my guns all ready to go. I wanted to talk to them about testing, and that there was too much of it, and how kids were suffering due to all this testing. And Senator Hagan looked at me and said, "So tell me about this cafeteria lunches," just about anything, because they're going to have questions that come at us that aren't anywhere related to what we went in to talk about.
That's a really good point. And, like any conversation, it's a give and take. And you look for opportunities to make your points, and you listen and you reflect, and you're always looking for some common ground. That's a great example, Cindy.
She did come to visit my school, though, so I'm glad you guys said that. She was really excited about coming to visit the school and took us on her.
Good.
Is anybody nervous or afraid?
Well, they're not going to admit it, Lori.
Well, I will say I was a little nervous, but I found out it's way easier than you think.
I think it's easier than some of the speeches we have to give, up in front of 500 people. So if we can handle that, you should be good with the meeting with 3 or 4 people in the office.
And again, it's Marguerite. I just, somebody said this. We had the pre-call last night. You're one of their 8-10 meetings that day, and the one before you might have been about nuclear disarmament, and the one following you might be about taxes. And it just never ever take anything personally. You're there to do a job, and your job, I sound like, I'm sorry, a little preaching, but your job is to be a representative for the teachers and kids in your state. So it's not about you. It's about promoting this idea of equitable education or Title II funding or whatever our talking points are. But if you can give those little personal speeches, the stories, that is what they will remember after their meetings about nuclear disarmament and what else, taxation or whatever else it is. And you'll get a phone call.
Those stories are so humanizing, and they may be going all day from a bunch of really dry meetings.
Yep.
And that story about a kindergartner who was very cute.
Yeah.
Is what they're going to remember. I totally agree with Marguerite. And I like that you said, that's what they remember, because that's what I find is when I go back later to these kind of meetings, that's what they recall from the first one. Maybe not all the points I made, but they remember the kids I talked about.
I've got to run, but the last thing I want to say is a huge thank you. You know, this whole Teacher of the Year gig puts you way outside your comfort zone on so many levels, so often. And this might be just one more. For some of you, this is a walk in the park. It's easy, but it's extra effort, and it's an extra day, and it's time, and you should feel really, really, really good about doing it. You should be very proud of yourselves. I'm really proud of this organization and the work that Lori and Jane have done in doing this. This is our job. This is the mantle that we took on. So we got to keep doing it till we die, I guess. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, well, we want them to know, we want Marguerite's representative to know we've got an organization full of people like her who can be a resource to them, right? So whatever their thing is, they're into STEM, whatever they're into,
Yep.
We've got people who can help you with that. And I want to be a resource for you. And that's how you're positioning us. Well, if there aren't any more questions, I'm totally open to giving you back 9 minutes of your life. Feel free to,
Sorry, before you go, or Brett.
Oh yeah, Brett, you had last, I'm sorry, you had last slide.
There's a good question here.
Yeah, we just got one.
Yeah.
So Katie's asking perhaps an odd question, but I'm wondering what would happen if your state has no lead. Well, Katie, if your state hasn't got a lead yet, it could be you. We can sign you up for that. You know, we'll probably have some states that don't have people visiting. I know that I'll probably be the only Oregon teacher, so I'll be on my own. I'm going to invite someone to go with me probably. But if your state doesn't have a lead, but you're there, I think that we'll probably ask you to step up and be that lead.
Someone will have to make the appointments for your state, right? And it's the lead or somebody on the team. So yeah.
Or if you're by yourself, it's you.
And are there any other questions? That's good. All right, Brett, there was one more slide. Sorry, I almost forgot about it. Here we go.
Woohoo!
Say no more, huh?
I love it. I think, Lori, once I heard you say you were on, it's not enough to be at the table, or you might end up being on the menu. I recall I think it was you who said that once.
Yes, I said the parsley. It's not enough to be the parsley. Make them treat you as substance by being substantive, and don't just be there to stamp approve what everybody else is doing.
I could have sworn a couple
You're more than to be decorative. Oh, I talked to a teacher. But anyway, okay, everybody. Thank you so much. We will send out the resources again one more time as soon as the video gets loaded on YouTube and everything. So it'll be just within the next couple of days. Feel free to reach out to me or Jane or Brett. If you've got any questions, Brett is the lead for the subcommittee. Marguerite is the board liaison. So just feel free to reach out, and thank you so much. Thanks for your time, and thanks for a great webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.